Hi, everybody. Welcome to Star Citizen Live, a succulent Chinese meal. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee, and that joke won't make any sense if you're watching the YouTube replay. If you've never seen Star Citizen Live before, it's where we take about an hour out of the end of our week and hang out with some of our developers, talk a little bit about the things they work on. Sometimes we show a little bit of the things they work on. Sometimes, like last week, we just train wreck for like an hour and hang out with superstar concept artists like Gavin Rothery. On the show this week, we have an esteemed panel of members from our FPS Content and Feature teams. Let's take a look at them now. Here they are. We've got JJ. JJ's this way. We've got Zach. We've got Jois. And we've got Declan. How you doing, guys?
Hello.
Good. Yeah,
Very well,
good.
thank you. How are you, Jared?
I'm getting by. I still got my super swank fashion hoodie, which will be available in the Star Citizen merchandise store. I think later today as part of the IAE festivities. So sometimes I shill stuff. Thank you for making it so easy for me.
Now I want one.
Today we're talking about FPS content and features. Before we get started, for some of you, it is your first time ever on the show. So let's take a few minutes and introduce yourselves and tell people exactly what you do. And we're going to start with Jois. Jois, who
Hello.
are you and what do you do for Star Citizen?
Hi, so I am Johan Holmier, but everyone around me here calls me Jois. And I am a senior FPS technical designer working on the weapon feature team. Some of the features that I've been working on is the attachment menu and the tractor beam. Glad to be here on Star Citizen Live today.
I'm glad to have you, man. Declan, who are you and what do you do for Star Citizen?
Hello, I'm a FPS System Designer 3, and I've been working a lot with armor lately, movement systems, doing a little bit of that, doors, which are not a fun topic, won't talk about them today, they're horrible, but yeah, overall good.
Doors. It is a tried and true maxim of game development that whenever you bring up doors, you just see the 1,000-yard stare show up into any systems designer. You said FPS Systems Designer 3?
Right.
You're the first 3 we've had on the show.
To be fair, I think it's kind of like a new, I only changed to the 3 recently, even though the role is still the same. But yeah, it's kind of
that's part of
the 2, isn't it?
Well, I mean, anybody else a 2? I don't want to crap on somebody. Zach's gonna be like, I'm a 2.
I'm 3.5.
Zach's a 3.
Okay.
Oh, come on, man! Don't do that.
No, I've had 6 or 7 titles here, so at least no Roman numerals at the end. Zach, who are you and what do you do for Star Citizen?
I am an FPS System Designer 3 as well, and what I've been doing recently, I've been the juice guy. We've been making the weapons feel great, making the oomph, making the bangs, just making them as fun as possible to use. I'm going to mention some of that soon.
Where's those cool sunglasses you had before?
Oh, they're on the floor somewhere, like most of them.
Wait, you
no.
Take them off and drop them.
I've lost. Oh no, here they are. There you go.
Zach's got a very complex filing system where he just drops everything on the floor.
Yeah. This is it's part of my floor drope. This is how it's what we have to wear when we're making the juice because it's such an insanely hot topic that we
I
have
think
to look as good as possible.
Those seem like the kind of glasses that a 3 would wear.
You know what? You should see the ones that the 4 wear. You know those giant inflatable ones? When you get to 4, that's what you get. But we're limited. I'm limited by my power at the moment by being.
They're actually they're locked away in the office. Like not everyone's allowed access to those. So
they're too powerful if you walk around the office with them.
JJ,
I haven't even been given a 3.
Like I said, 3.5.
It's not fair, is it?
JJ, no stranger to Star Citizen Live. Who are you and what do you do?
I'm Johnny Asavicius. I'm the lead FPS system designer, and I work with all these guys on a bunch of different systems. So everything that these guys have mentioned and more, like we're working on a bunch of systems going forward. So we're going to talk about a lot of those today, so I won't get into it.
Yes, and we will get into it so that Lucky 13 can relax in the chat. We'll get to it, Lucky. This is my time. It's my time. All right. So, as usual, we collect questions from the community on Spectrum, our bespoke communication platform available on robertspaceindustries.com, where we let people submit their questions and then vote up which ones they want to see answered most, and then remove all the ones that are completely and woefully unapplicable to the team that we're currently have, and then come up with more. We can also take questions in the chat. You can submit your question with the word question in capital letters surrounded by brackets in the chat. That'll help our community team pull that out from the chat. We're going to start with probably the biggest question, the question that was on most people's minds in the chat. Hand salvage. And this is an important distinction. There's salvage, and then there's ship salvage, and then there's hand salvage. And since you are the FPS team, we're going to talk about hand salvage. Hand salvage. What will the first implementation of hand salvage look like?
Sure, I can take this one. So basically, this is what we're calling hull stripping, which is the first tier of implementation of salvage, basically. So, hand salvage. But what is hull stripping? So hull stripping is essentially you are using either the multi-tool or a dedicated tool to get to a ship or a derelict or anything in that, in kind of like that vein, and you're basically using the tool to strip away material that then you're taking on board and storing in a canister. For the very first implementation, it will be a very generic material that is just kind of like munging everything off the ship that you're taking off it, that you're stripping away, and it's condensing it down and putting it in there for either selling to obviously make some money as a profession, or you can use it for repair as well, which is another part of the feature that we've not really talked about too much. And it's essentially the reverse of what salvage is. So if you think of salvage as like, I'm going up to a ship hull, I'm firing my weapon, and if you think about something, you like, if you've ever seen those really satisfying videos of those like rust strippers, the laser rust strippers, where it's just like, that's kind of like the look we're going for. But you're basically burning away and taking on the metals of like the ship hull, and you're kind of seeing the skeleton underneath using the damage map system that we've got. And you're pulling that away into a generic material that you can then use for repairing as well. So what will that look like? So when you strip away, like I say, we'll be using the damage map system, and what we're planning on doing is when you go to repair, you'll be basically patching the holes caused by damage and restoring the kind of metals in that area. But obviously, because it's not a paint gun as well, it's not magic, you'll basically be storing it back to like almost like a burnished metal structure. So if you've seen someone who's been through the wars a bit and got out of their cockpit and patched up their ship as a bit of an emergency, they'll be arriving back at port with like big kind of like shiny metal filling like holes in their ship, like they've had like a bad day at the dentist almost. The basic functionality that we're doing for FPS, we're going to be using on the Drake Vulture as well, because that's obviously got the stripping guns to kind of strip on a much larger scale compared to FPS. But obviously, as Jared said, this is just the very, very first layer of salvage. The next iteration actually of hand salvage will be to start stripping individual materials from ships. So very similar to kind of what we've done with the recent medical UI, is when you look at a ship, you'll be able to get some readouts on kind of what the integrity of the hull is, which you can kind of either take away or restore based on if you're salvaging or repairing. And then lost my train of thought now. And then what was I up to? So when you go and start trying to grab individual materials from a ship, the UI will obviously tell you what you're looking at, what you'll be gathering, and that will be like an additional complexity to, like, if I repair my ship with this substance, I will get more of its integrity back if I'm repairing the wing with the correct thing, basically. So that's kind of the next iteration of hand salvage, and then further down the line, obviously, we're going to build on that for the ships, which is kind of like the cutting off parts and taking those on and cutting away and using the muncher that we've got on the Reclaimer, for example. That will be coming down the line as well. So I just want to stress that this is the very first kind of like dive into salvage that we're going to have, rather than it being this is what it's going to end up being for everything. And obviously we've got a couple of tools that we're going to have. So we've got the multi-tool dedicated tool as well. For now, the dedicated tool is going to be limited to using this universal material, but it'll be able to strip faster, has a higher capacity and stuff. Whereas down the line, that will be using the kind of separated material functionality that we've just talked about. And then I did steal another question. I'm sorry, Jared. I stole another question from because I read through the Spectrum thread. Someone did mention, can we remove components and weapons from ships and we'll be able to sell them? I did want to cover that because that's something that we're looking into as a bit of a stretch goal for Tier 0, where we want to do it. We just want to find the best way to do it. So if that is a case of like cutting around or cutting the kind of attachment point of a weapon or using the tractor beam to almost pull it off, we'll have to think about options there. And obviously, Jois is Mr. UI, so we'll be looking into some options we've got there for like how we message that across the best way.
Fair. As a follow-up from the chat, there's a lot of the things that are done in the first person, like medical stuff like that, are beams. It's switch an attachment, switch an item, shoot a beam at a thing. Shoot a beam, it heals a thing. Shoot a beam, it salvages a thing. Shoot a beam, it repairs a thing. Why is that? Let's talk a little bit about why in a game of this size and scope are these things, beams, and like, why aren't we making like Operation? is you get what I'm saying? Get where I'm going with this? It's like, why beams, basically?
Well, kind of for a start, a lot of the systems that we have in game at the moment are the very, very first implementation of them. So when you think about it, it was very convenient for us to put that on something like the multi-tool, which is a very good base for swapping in and out attachments and changing the functionality of it and kind of getting the very first level of each of these mechanics in there. So when I talk about salvage, for example, the multi-tool, the iteration that we're putting in now, which is the very simplest form of salvage, is always what the multi-tool is going to do. It's not going to do anything more than that, but everything extrapolated out from that will be more. Like, for example, being able to take weapons off ships, for example, cutting bits off and putting them in your reclaimer, going selling ship parts and stuff like that. That will all come down the line. So I think there's obviously, if people are saying that everything feels a bit beamy at the moment, it's because it's a lot simpler. It's a much simpler interaction than what it's going to be down the line, when there's going to be a lot more considerations to kind of like take into account. And if you think about even like the medical gun versus the multi-tool, it feels like if you have the medical attachment for the multi-tool, it's very easy to run up to someone and go like, hey, I'm going to heal you, I'm interacting with you, I'm firing the beam at you, cool. That's basically what we wanted it to be. It's a very simple way of keeping someone alive, which is what we wanted it to be in the universe. It's like an emergency tool that you're using to stabilize someone. But when you look at the medical gun, you don't just run up to them and fire the beam, or you can do if you want to, because the functionality is on there. But an advanced user or a medical practitioner will be going over to the advanced side, moving all the sliders around, checking all the symptoms, all the issues that they've got with them, and making some informed decisions based off that. Now, in terms of like why beams, obviously, if we wanted to make this a bit more visceral and up close, we're going to end up taking a lot of control away from the player. So if it was, say, for example, Jared, you were down on the floor and you were wiggling around on the floor, and I was trying to get hold of you, we would both have to be locked into place for that entire process, which might make both of us like vulnerable. For example, taking control away from the player is obviously sometimes appropriate, but doing it all the time for a lot of these different mechanics makes things a lot more difficult. So obviously it's a bit nicer to keep player control in, keep people at range, and just kind of have like almost beam or range devices that let us do some of these kind of perform some of these systems.
The control thing is where I was hoping you were going to go with that. It's in a multiplayer game, losing control of your character is probably one of the least favorite things that can happen. But in a massively multiplayer game, where when people can start prompts with you, it's like, oh look, I'm going to try to heal you, or I'm going to try, and it just stops you, and it's in order for the animations to match up, like this person's going to grab you and they're going to rip open your thing or whatever, and now your character is just stuck while somebody else is essentially playing and in control of your person, is a very uncomfortable and not very enjoyable experience. So the beams allow that kind of flexibility and stuff like that. And again, as these things develop and stuff like this, there will be more things like stripping the components out manually and stuff, and going in and pulling this out and stuff like that. So it's a good place to start that protects the victim's gameplay experience, if it were. Let's see. Are there any plans to redo the player interaction while holding F? For instance, instead of having to search for floating text, perhaps you could actually highlight the entire object you are aiming at instead. And then when selecting text on anything with more than 3 options, it's a real pain to use. For instance, and this one specifically, when looting.
Yeah, so this is something that we obviously came across as we've been playing the game, because we all play too, right? And we're doing a lot of testing with the new inventory system and looting objects off bodies and trying to take individual armor pieces off or individual grenades off. And obviously, with the way our physicalized kind of inventory works with like the attachments, it's quite difficult sometimes trying to get hold of the one that you want because the floating text appears. And that was always something that was not the permanent solution. So we have something called the personal interaction system and the personal interaction system wheel that we want to implement down the line, which is essentially when you're hovering over some of these items, they will highlight like they do now, but you're not going to automatically get all of the interactions appear on them. What we're going to do is we're going to implement a essential default item action for every item in the game based off the state that it's currently in. So, for example, if something's on the floor, you can go over to it, highlight it, click it, it will pick it up. That's probably what most people want to do with something's on the floor. They want to get it in their hands and look at it. We'll be setting all of those individually, but that is also something that is flexible for players to be able to set their own default item actions for different types of items. So, for example, if they wanted to, I don't know if this is possible, but say like every time they see a grenade on the floor, they want to throw it when they just click on it, then they will obviously automatically pick it up and throw it like immediately. Or if they want to change their default item action of like if I see a magazine, like a mineable thing on the floor, I can go up to it. The default might be to pick it up and then you can store it from there. Or people might just want to store it straight away. So it's just like, okay, I can change that option. I know I always want to do this. It's always going to go in my bag. So the flexibility is there for what people want to do. And then, yeah, basically, the other option is you can right click on that item. So once you've highlighted over the item that you want to interact with, you right click on it and we'll have a wheel of interactions up like we do now, which should be a lot easier to use.
All right. We already know that adding bullets back into empty ballistic magazines, we already know about adding bullets back into empty ballistic magazines, but this person would like to know about energy weapons. Can any more detail be given on these, such as if there will be a significant cost to recharging magazines, possibly off a ship's power grid, and if there will be a distinction between laser energy and plasma energy?
Yeah, I can start this off at least and just say that there's definitely upside and downside of each of the ballistic weapons that we want to kind of like touch on. So ballistic weapons, you've obviously got limited ammo. Generally, in a lot of cases, our ballistic magazines are more limited in capacity compared to the batteries. Zach has been reviewing some of that as part of the weapon audit as well. But basically, in short, like ballistic weapons, you get a bit less ammo, but you can go out in the field and you can scavenge. We've obviously got a system coming in at some point, I think we've detailed before, which is mag stripping. So you'll be able to take ammunition for other magazines, put it in your magazine, and you'll be able to use that ammunition going forward. Eventually, when we get some of the suit systems, the powered suit systems, the idea is that you'd be able to potentially trickle charge like your energy batteries. So they're a bit more versatile in that it might take a while to recharge, but over time, like if you're on like a long kind of like expedition or whatever, and you occasionally get into combat, then they should be trickle charging off your suit and taking power away from your suit to be able to kind of like keep up on that. So they're a bit better for like a longer engagement kind of situation. But then there are some additional downsides to energy weapons, because that sounds like a big bonus, right? I've got energy that keeps coming back to my batteries, which kind of comes into like wear and overheat, which is something that Deck's actually been looking at.
Yeah, so if we touch about wear for a second, when a weapon shoots, it'll generate wear, and then that's for all weapons. But for energy weapons, they can overheat if you shoot too much. So, for example, plasma weapons, they might heat up really quickly, and then they would cool down really quickly. Laser weapons, they might take a little longer to heat up and then cool down slower. We're always going to have the environment that the player is in, impact the cooling down. If you're on a freezing planet, you would expect it to cool down quicker. Same with pressure, like the atmospheric pressure would impact it a little bit. With some weapons, like the Artscav, it takes a while to shoot the next shot, so it could cool down immediately, not immediately, but in the duration between the two shots. So even though it would generate heat, it might never overheat. But the thing is of overheating, like because it's generated by player actions, you will be able to control it. You're not forced to overheat. If it's getting hot, just stop shooting, and it'll cool down before you do any wear to the weapon itself.
What does the larger picture of the wear and dirt system look like? We haven't talked about this in a while. Is it just cosmetic, or how will it impact players and their weapons?
Okay, so wear and dirt, they're actually two separate systems, but they work very closely together. So wear, as we mentioned, with weapons, you gain wear when you shoot, and when you game where the weapon durability goes down, durability is separate from HP though, so a weapon would have a HP value and a durability value. As the durability goes down, it could start to, get misfires, that kind of thing would occur. The lower durability, the more likely they are, and the more severe they would be. With dirt, the dirtier your weapon is, the more wear it would gain. Same with armor. Armor, it would lose wear through just running, sprinting, aggressive movement, so to speak. But then if your armor is dirty, then it'll gain wear quicker. With regards to dirt, I'm just trying to think. Dirt. Oh, there's also when your item receives damage, a percentage of that damage will also be applied as wear. So you can't have like a 100 durability weapon that has 10 HP. Like, it doesn't really make sense. They'll kind of trickle down. But yeah, with dirt, like the biome and the weather that you're in will impact the amount of dirt you gain over time. If you're in a space station, it's a clean environment. You wouldn't expect to generate too much dirt at all. If you dropped your weapon on the ground, that would be a little bit of dirt. If you're going prone, that movement, more dirt, that kind of thing. And of course, we'll have ways which player they can clean their weapon, they can clean themselves, they can restore whatever durability has been lost. So.
Yeah, at its core, it's kind of a system that will add to the tapestry of the PU, where it's just like everything you find isn't always going to be pristine anymore. It'll be like, I open a loot box and I find this weapon. This weapon almost has its own history to it. You found it, it's worn, someone else might have used it, like another player might have left it there. Like, it's just going to basically add to the visual diversity, as well as like the kind of essence of the PU, where not everything is permanent, not everything is pristine. Things have aged, things can break. Obviously, if you look after your stuff, then that's really good. Like, you can go and get it repaired, refurbished. That's the idea, at least. But if you don't look after it, it will eventually break.
All right, so is that going to lead to things like diminished fire rate or inaccurate firing, misfires, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so misfires will definitely be a thing. If we use weapons as the example again, it's the easiest one. We've currently, we're doing like 3 categories of misfires: minor, major, and critical. A minor one would be a dry fire. A major one would be, it jammed and you need to clear it, and then the critical one would be the weapon pretty much blows up in your hands, it falls apart, and that one you would expect to occur when the HP has become low as well, because when you do encounter a misfire, it does tick away at the weapon's HP as well. Loss of accuracy, that could be a thing. It's still early in the design, so we're still milling around with ideas. But of course, so long as you keep your weapon in good condition, you won't encounter misfires. They only begin to occur once the durability has dropped to a certain threshold. So if you're prepared and you keep yourself in good condition, then you won't have to worry about them.
Okay. And for the folks in the chat that are maybe reacting a bit negatively to the idea, especially in a game that has permadeath, let's remember that, this isn't a thing where you drop prone once and your thing drops 10%. No. It's like this. It's like we said after the future of space combat thing. You take it to the point of realism, you convert it to the point of believability, then you bring it back to the point of fun. So it's a thing that will be constantly balanced and constantly adjusted. And even the very first version of this that goes out won't look like the second version, won't look like the third version, because these things are all going to be adjusted and tweaked and twerked and whatnot based on feedback from everybody. You guys, internal testing, all of it. So yeah. So give that a chance. Let's see. Look for the chat here. Any chance we can get a fireman carry instead of just body dragging? This person really wants to chuck people over their shoulders, I guess.
Yeah, so we have talked about this actually, because obviously we do have the body drag for moving people around, but that's kind of more what we envisioned that as. Is that was more of a short range and quick action of, say, like, you're in a firefight, one of your buddies has gone down and you want to get them to cover, you can kind of very quickly run out, grab them, pull them away while being able to kind of like fire off with your pistol a little bit. But the fireman carry is probably going to be something that's going to be better for long range. So like if you know, my ship's a kilometer away and I've gone out with you, Jared, and we're having a good time, and then you accidentally fall off a cliff or something, and I don't have the healing equipment with me and it's back on the ship, I'm not going to want to drag you across a rocky surface, like bump, 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 all the way back to the ship. Like, that might actually finish you off. But I want a bit more of a robust carry for kind of like longer distances, and we've kind of talked about this for stealth as well. Obviously, stealth is a big part of the combat loop that we've got, especially against AI. Again, body drag's really good for just dragging a body around, you know, behind a dumpster or whatever and hiding it. But if we eventually want to do things like hiding a body in things, we're going to need some way to get them up on us and put them in. So, or put them over a railing or something like that. So we've talked about this as an option, and it's something that we definitely want to do in the future.
Yeah, cool. People are freaking out about twerking. Yeah, I'll talk to Steve Bender, and he'll do it if I ask. So y'all better behave in chat.
You just do it, or just do it, or do it for the game.
Both. Jois, let's talk a bit about hacking. We've seen hacking on the roadmap a couple of times. It's pushed for a couple of various reasons. We're not going to get into that, but about hacking as the features, about how it's going to work. Describe to us where we're going, what our intentions are with hacking, what kind of things we're looking to be able to hack to take control over. You know it better than I do, so talk to us about hacking.
Yes, so hacking is a very exciting feature, at least in my opinion. So currently how the hacking that's implemented in the PU work right now is you basically go and you buy a chip, and then somewhere in the universe you find like this chip slot of like a hackable computer that you insert the chip into, and it's basically a timer that ticks down and it's got a chance to jam, so you need to restart it. And what we wanted to do with hacking, moving on from that, the current implementation, is that we wanted to introduce some more engaging gameplay when it comes to hacking. So we've explored a bunch of different concepts, and we've had a long period of experimentation and, you know, playing around with different ideas internally in the design team. So what we have right now for what hacking is going to be, we're going to add this hacking device, which is going to be something that you can equip in your hand, and then we're going to still keep those chips, which basically works like the ammo for the hacking device. So you have the hacking device in your hand, and there's going to be these things in the world that you can hack. You go up to them, interact with them, and they connect wirelessly, and you're going to see this 3D visualization of a network. You're going to be able to move around at this network and also manipulate the network to open up new paths and new routes, and while you're inside here, like what is your objective? Like how do you complete the hack? Well, basically you find these weak points that you insert like a Trojan horse into, and then you connect those up together. Sounds pretty simple, but there's also going to be these antivirus systems present when you're hacking. So someone might have like an antivirus that's going to try to stop you basically and put like make your life of hacking harder, and that leads us into like difficulty scaling. So there's gonna be like varying ranges from like the easier hacks. They might be smaller and very quick to complete, very straightforward, and then on systems that have more antivirus, like a higher antivirus level present, is going to be quite a hard challenge for the players to finish the hacks. We also have a way to play this hacking game through a command prompt. So you're basically going to be able to, in addition to the normal control scheme, you're going to be able to type commands which control the hacking. And there's going to be various bonuses that you get from using the command prompt over the default control scheme. So hopefully that's going to scratch that hardcore hacking fantasy urge that a lot of players I think are expecting from this. So why would I hack stuff? Like, what can I hack? Well, you're hacking in order to gain access to a system or part of a system that you previously didn't have access to. So what could that be? Like, the most straightforward example is a door. You know, there's a door, it's locked, you don't have security access, you hack it, bam, now it's open, and it opens up a new path, or maybe a room that contains valuable loot, or whatever the level designers come up with. Mainly it's going to be like, or secondly, it could be like computers or terminals which control other systems, like gravity could be a cool thing that it controls, or yeah, whatever the level designers can come up with.
Basically, you make the system, and then it's whatever they apply it to.
Yeah, whatever the scenario that they're designing for. Loot containers as well could require you to hack them. Eventually, later down the line, you're going to be able to hack someone's ship, and that leads us onto the PvP aspect of hacking, which basically, if someone's hacking your chip, you're going to get a notification that there's someone's trying to gain access to your system, and you can actually go in and take manual control over the antivirus system and try to, hopefully you'll do a better job than the antivirus AI would.
Okay. Did you even consider just firing a beam at it? Did you even consider it?
No, this one's wireless.
Yeah, this one is wireless.
Yeah, we've got the device that's wireless, yeah. But what we've really wanted to try and lean into is selling the hacking fantasy, because that was when we first started off with this. That was the part that we really struggled with, and it was like we were coming up with ideas for the almost like this system to kind of demonstrate hacking, but it didn't feel like you were hacking. So now we've almost created this asymmetrical game mode where it's like you are hiding in this maze of a network, you're relaying the path, and you're trying to find your way around it, and you aren't aware of where everything is. You're trying to discover it and find all of these routes, and you're trying to create these networks. And obviously at the same time, on the other side, the antivirus doesn't know where you are, and they're constantly searching for you. So it's a very, like Joe said, it's a very like a kind of like the bottom end. It's a very quick little puzzle that you can kind of get through. Like if I was trying to get on your ship, Jared, and you lock the door, that might be, you bought a cheap ship, for example. I can get in really easy with this little puzzle. You might get a warning that I'm on the ship, but then if you were say like, you're on an Idris and I was trying to hack into your systems and like start interrupting your shields and stuff, that would be like the we're in a big network here. I'm really having to, sweat and work to figure out how to basically break in, and you're getting alerted that someone might be trying to get into your system, and then you're like, oh my god, I need to try and get in here and take manual control to get this guy out. So we really wanted to kind of sell a hacking fantasy in a visual format that people will quite easily understand, but also we wanted to cater for people who want to use something like the command prompt for the true like hacking feel, and there is definitely scope there to kind of utilize both and take advantage of either side. So I fully imagine like a power player of hacking would be like almost making like macros for the command prompt and hitting those and gaining the benefits from that, while he's like selecting things on the map at the same time using the visual interface. So I'm we're all very, very excited to get it out there, and we've been playtesting it internally, and we're all really, really liking it.
Mm-hmm, definitely. It's basically like a combination of a puzzle game and a stealth game. It's shaping up pretty cool. I'm excited about it.
Right. We got to take this one from the chat here. Can we please get a select all so that we can drag all the loot all at one time from one storage to another, so we don't have to continuously drag one item at a time, like a I'm not going to say that word. So what do you think? Select all?
Yeah, we've talked about doing a move all basically. We know how many items people are managing in some of these in some of the inventories they've got in locations or the bigger ships. So it's just part of more ongoing improvements, right? Because this is the very first iteration of inventory that just went out. It was a pretty big undertaking for us, and there are just more improvements to come down the line. Like we want to add a search feature in future. So like obviously you've got your filters at the moment. This would basically be a search filter like you'd expect from kind of any search filtering system. But it basically like, I know I've got a P6LR in here somewhere, so I'm going to type P6LR. It'll filter everything else out, and it's there, so you can very quickly find what you want. You could even potentially type like pistol, and it'll search for any pistols. And you can do that. So it's just another quick way that you can kind of filter through your inventory. Stuff like visual improvements, so improve the lighting on the character, highlighting them when the camera's like behind a wall or kind of like behind a counter or something like that. That's something else we want to do. Even things like showing tooltips on the tooltips themselves, showing what's attached to it. So it's like if I have a weapon with a suppressor and a scope and an underbarrel attachment on there, it'd be nice if that was listed on the tooltip so you can actually tell what's on there. But yeah, basically there's a lot more to come for the inventory. That was the first iteration, and we just want to make it better and better and better.
Jois, as far as the antiviruses, are there going to be like a good, better, and best? And if there are tiers, will there be a horrible Norton that just prevents you from doing anything on your own ship? Like you install Norton antivirus and you can't even open the doors.
I'm not sure about the Norton one, but there's definitely going to be different tiers of antivirus that you're going to come up against.
Okay, cool. Toast, I lost us a sponsor. He's not in yet. It's still too early. You have multiple new ammo types on the roadmap. Could you elaborate on what they will be at this time?
Yes, so we have a couple of cool ones. We've got plasma and fire, incendiary even. It's basically they were more like a damage over time, so you could inflict some sort of damage, and then maybe there's an additional dot. And eventually, we kind of want to work that into a more, we could play into some of our systems like, hey, if you've got fire, it could interact with this. If you've got plasma, it could interact like this. So, for example, if you had an LMG, which had incendiary rounds, you could provide suppressing fire on an area. If you shot at the ground, in this scenario, the ground could then end up, catching fire. So if you want to push someone out of cover, if you want to shoot plasma at the ground near them, that could end up, causing these hazard zones, essentially. So you've got this really cool, fun way of forcing players out of their situation. We've got so many cool ideas that we're brewing up for these kind of things that we're really excited to get these damage types in and make them meaningful. So, the difference between having incendiary and ballistic and so on and so forth is actually relevant. We're also working on something called disarray, which ties into a lot more systems that come out later. So, interacting with the player's armor and their power system and stuff like that. But obviously, that's a bit further away.
All right.
Yeah,
it's worth noting that will work on the ships right now, because obviously we've got the electromagnetic weapons that they use. You can take the ships down without causing damage to them. Disarray is a very similar version of that, but it's kind of like trickling that damage in over time.
Yeah.
What about other sidearms like machine pistols or personal defense weapons, sawed-off shotguns? They've got all kinds of ideas here. What can you tell us about more diverse sidearms?
So this is something obviously we care a lot about. When we say we want to add a weapon or a sidearm or something, we want it to be very impactful and meaningful. So, I've been doing more kind of a bit of a weapon audit, which is, analyzing what we have and, how useful things are. So, for example, the LH86, the Gemini pistol, we're saying, okay, this could probably be a machine pistol. Like this is an interesting, fun difference that this pistol can actually be. So it's a lot more meaningful and impactful than compared to the bearing pistol and so on and so forth. We're gonna obviously when we make these changes, we're very considerate of how the weapon looks and how it feels. So that will come with a whole new recoil for it and some art changes like extending the magazine. Some other examples of how we're making sidearms more interesting is the arc-like pistol that's going to be potentially turned into a 3-round burst rifle. 3-round burst pistol. Just to kind of get that variety up, and people who like burst pistols and stuff, they've got something to play with. And going further than that, we talk about this weapon audit. We're looking at all our FPS weapons and how they can be improved. So, for example, sniper rifles, when you're aiming down the sights, and you fire and you pull the bolt, it can judder a bit and not look as great as we want it to be. So we're really looking at this kind of stuff to make them feel better. But I mean, as far as the weapon audit goes, it's pretty all encompassing at the moment. You know, we've been doing competitive analysis of different titles, slowing their stuff frame by frame down, looking at real life, you know, to understand where that, you know, that weapon juice comes from, because we have this great roster of weapons, but we want them to feel like they're in a game that's launching in like 5 years. You know, we want them to be stand out and feel fantastic. So we're really looking how we can make these things feel as juicy as possible. But, you know, completely looking at our tools and changing them up. If you were to see what the P4 looks like now in our current weapon branch, it would blow your mind. It looks like 1,000 times better. It's insane. It's something we really care about, you know, making them feel as good as possible. Because it kind of ties into that more like, you know, looking at the weapons in general. We've been looking at some weapons and, you know, their functionality is maybe a bit samey compared to like other assault rifles. So, for example, the Gallant rifle, that's, you know, it's a Cluey weapon, which is, you know, it's our all-around weapon. So it's like, well, this could be a burst weapon, right? It's purely a burst weapon. But then we say it has a 3-round burst and a 5-round burst. 5-round burst, obviously, you know, bit heavier recoil, bit longer downtime compared to the 3-round burst, but it gives you that like active choice as a player to do something interesting. Then we look at like the Lumen 5. That's a 5-round burst SMG, I believe, currently. But we're looking at, you know, we want to make that like far more interesting and give it a bit of uniqueness. So we say, yes, this is a burst SMG, but you can tap down the trigger because the actual downtime of the burst is a lot lower. So it's like you can basically get it going full auto, but it is essentially a burst SMG. And then another good example, the S71, right? That's supposed to be a marksman rifle, and the recoil is a bit weird. It can kind of move up and down a little bit, but, you know, we want to get it in more line with like what it feels like to shoot a marksman rifle, where we have like a consistent offset pattern that you can go like shoot with, you know, if you tap the trigger as much as possible, you should kind of be punished for that. And then last one I'm going to say, probably the arrowhead. It shakes when you aim, which isn't great, which isn't kind of what we want. And we're looking at that and like, you know, how can we make a Cluey sniper rifle more interesting, basically. So it's been really good. We've made a lot of really good progress making the weapons feel amazing. Big thing as well, leaning into manufacturer identity, right? If you've got a bearing rifle, you expect that to be sensible. You've got a Castak arms rifle, you kind of want that to be crazy, you know. You almost refer to it to being a bit more what you'd expect from like a Soviet weapon, right? But like in 1,000 years' time, like what would a crazy Castak kind of black market weapon behave like versus something like a bearing, which is a lot more military, a lot more sensible. Yeah, there's lots of stuff going on right here. Would you want to say something, JJ?
Yeah, I was just going to say, a lot of it's about weapon personality, like you've covered the manufacturer stuff, and it's just like, you know, we don't want all of our weapons to feel the same. We want them all to feel different. And obviously, like, Joris, you were working with me on this a while ago now, is like one of the things that we did do was we put our weapons in a spreadsheet and just said, like, how do we want to make it feel different? How do we want to set it apart from other weapons? Obviously, down the line, we might make more weapons that feel the same, but right now we want to kind of like give a kind of breadth and like selection of gameplay options for everyone to kind of use, and we want to see how those are applied in the PU. So we were looking at like real world analogies of weapons from other games, and just kind of saying like, you know, where does this fit in? Like, what's our first stage of like where we want to aim this thing at? And then obviously we do the Star Citizen pass and make sure that it's suitable for our game and that it feels right. So yeah, it's been a very long process, and it'll probably keep going for a long time. But we've kind of, the first stage is use the tools that we've got. Zach's been doing a lot of improvements to the things like the recoil, which hopefully we should be seeing in the relatively near future.
And I'm going to address some things from the chat here for a second. Guys, he said 5 years as an offhand remark. Just pull the time frame of things out. Development of this game will go on and on, even past the point where it's beta, past the point where it's 1.0. The game just keeps going even past whenever releases. Second, for those asking about time frames, when is this, when is that? That's what the public roadmap's for. Be sure to check that out on robertspaceindustries.com/roadmap. That's our best and most up-to-date information about when things are getting added into the persistent universe. You'll find no more accurate information than what's right there. And finally, the views and opinions expressed by Jared Huckabee about the Norton antivirus do not reflect those of Roberts Space Industries, Cloud Imperium Games, or their subsidiaries. And I apologize to all users of Norton who are watching this show.
He is right there.
Because you have to use Norton. All right, let's move on to the next thing here. Climbing and mantling right now seems kind of lackluster. There's only certain things you can actually interact with to do these actions. Will it feel more intuitive in the future, or instead of as it does right now, which is just kind of click and go?
So yeah, we're working on a few different things. So one thing is that a ledge grab will be coming at some point, which is like at the moment you can't jump over a gap and grab onto a ledge. That's just simply not possible. The system doesn't allow for it right now. I think the way it actually technically works is you need the top of the ledge to almost be aligned with the floor. It always needs to find a floor there, so that just won't work, and that's something we want to work on next. There are definitely some general improvements, like I think you mentioned in the question, which was like if you walk up something waist height, you should be able to climb it. This ties into a couple of things. So like there are some bugs associated with this, which actually we found there are some issues when we were going through the CitizenCon flow. That there were problems that were raised that we've noted down that we're going to work on as soon as we get a chance. And then another intention is that obviously everything at the moment is manually marked up for climbing, and it's obviously with the world as big as we have, it can be easy to miss some of those things. We've got so many locations, we've got a lot of procedurally generated content and stuff on the planet too. Sometimes we will miss stuff, so the eventual intention is that we might be able to do some sort of auto markup, but that is probably, when we're talking timeframes, that is further down the line than everything else, but that is where we want to get to eventually.
All right. Can we either draw weapons inside safe zones to modify them without shooting, or get a space inside safe zones where we can pull these things out, like weapon stores or gun ranges or something like that?
So I think you can do that in the PE right now. Now that we've added the new inventory system, I'm pretty sure if you have weapons on your back and you grab an attachment from your inventory and you start pulling it over, you'll see the attachment points on the weapon. I'm not 100% sure if you can do a swap or take them off from the weapon at the moment, so that is something I can look into and see if we can get that working. But otherwise, there's kind of no good way to get in. Kind of like this other part of the question is that there's no good way to get a weapon out in green zones right now, because we don't have a robust enough system to kind of like have law enforcement come and deal with you basically. So that's something that obviously the PU team's looking at long term. We've had a lot of discussions around how we want to handle it, and it's just something that we're going to roll out down the line. And then you will be able to get a gun out and then get arrested.
Okay. Let's talk a bit about melee weapons, let's talk about non-lethal weapons first, and then we'll do melee weapons. Lots of questions in the chat about non-lethal, things like tasers or batons, stuff like that. What can you tell us about your thoughts about non-lethal weapons?
So we know we 100% need them for professions like bounty hunting, and even people who want to, or if they get into a situation where they are almost like under attack and they want to kind of almost have a more passive solution, they have an option there. So that is one of the reasons why we made the taser or the stun gun, and we have concepted it. We know exactly what it's going to look like. We've kind of gone through a bunch of that stuff. It's just a case of getting it through the content pipeline now. I don't believe there's too much engineering work involved either. This is a designer saying that, by the way. But we do have the lightning bolt weapons, for example, that we put out a little while ago. They are using the same sort of damage that the stun gun is going to use, but we've pulled the lever slightly to actually do lethal damage rather than stun damage. So we have the system in place to be able to do what we need to do there.
And then let's go into the melee question. Baseball bats, batons, baseball bats, the sledgehammers, baseball bats. What are our thoughts here?
That's a short answer. We do.
I played all of Cyberpunk with a baseball bat.
Yeah,
legendary difficulty beginning to end baseball bat.
I don't necessarily think we'll have a baseball bat, but we might have something similar, like swords, more improvised weapons like crowbars, like you might find like a junky looking axe that someone's kind of assembled and taped together kind of thing. And yeah, we definitely want to do things like that. Something that might be stored on your back, one of your weapon slots on your back, that's a lot kind of got a much wider and like longer range of attack. We could even potentially, I mean, the melee system is already there, right? We've got the system with the knife, and we've tested it with a few other things, so it does potentially work. And obviously, it's a lot of animation work and tweaking work to get it actually feeling good, but you can do it with a two-handed weapon, you can do it with a one-handed weapon. So yeah, and definitely something in the future that we want to look into and we have talked about already.
Keep on hearing stuff about katanas. That's one for the weebs.
Rich Tyra, big fan of katanas, just so you all know.
I retract that statement. Rich, I love you.
And I will add that there was a baseball bat behind the counter in the Pyro demo at CitizenCon. So
Yeah, I'm not saying.
I'm just going to say you're going to have to deal with me in the UK for a lot of next year. So I'm just going to needle you. Eventually, you'll give in.
Need to keep you on my good side.
Eventually, you'll give in. Let's switch gears to armor. This is a question that comes up quite regularly. We see this at least once a year on these shows. Will heavy armor eventually prevent players from being able to operate certain vehicles or turrets or other places where players are supposed to get into and operate?
So, funnily enough, this was actually something we talked a little bit about today, so that's good timing. Essentially, anything with complex controls, say like flying a ship, we want to prevent you from doing in heavy and potential and even medium armor, because if you actually wear those things and look at them, like the glove thickness and everything and how bulky the chest piece is, it would make it very, very difficult to try and fly in something like that. So totally be able to do it with light armor on, but the expectation is you should be able to remove that and store it before you get into a cockpit or you get into a seat on one of the larger ships. And there should be options on at least the very large majority of those ships to be able to store armor somewhere convenient, that if you are in a situation where it's like, hey, I looted this heavy armor and I want to get back in my ship, I've got somewhere to put it, as long as you've not stored, like 50,000 med pens in there, like I know some of you like to do. Yeah, that's basically the idea. And there are obviously benefits between light, medium, and heavy. Like light, you're obviously moving around a lot faster, but you're a lot more vulnerable in things like combat. Whereas heavy is a lot more combat focused, and there are downsides like not being able to fly a ship. So you're factoring in things like weight, stealth, speed, protection, and so on, and even ability-related things like being able to fly.
Okay. As a follow-up here, back at CitizenCon 2019, we first talked about archetypes and the different armor archetypes. Deck, you want to give us an update about the archetypes, how that's going, where we're at with that?
Sure. So we're progressing. We're kind of, really feeling out what kind of stats they should have. So there'd be 4 archetypes is what we have planned. There'd be combat, specialist, utilitarian, and support. Combat is, your soldier. It's good at combat. It would be poor at exploration, that kind of thing. Specialist, that's more of your bounty hunter assassination role. It's going to be stealthy. It's still going to be doing good damage and mitigation, but not as much as combat. Utilitarian, that's your exploration suit. It'll be good temperature ranges, good pressure, that kind of thing. Good inventory size as well for you to start throwing stuff on your back or in pockets, whatever. And then support, it's really good at power generation, which is more for when armors have power, that kind of thing. But it would be like players could give you magazines that you could charge up, that kind of thing. I think it's got double the med pen consumable slots than everyone else, so it's just like a walking healer, just drugging people up. Don't even ask for it, just hit them, go on, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's going along. Still a way to go, but we're making progress.
Yeah, it's something we don't want to roll out just yet, purely because there are gameplay implications and upsides and downsides of each that we don't have yet. So, as Deck mentioned, a big upside of support is the power generation stuff, which is basically not going to be, it's quite a big undertaking to get that working on the armor. And that's not to say we have to wait for that to go in. We just need enough upside and downside on each and get that going before we can actually roll this change out. So people are going to start seeing some differences between all the different armors.
We've only got 5 minutes left, so let's do some lightning round. Let's see how many more of these questions we can get in before we gotta let you go. Let's see. Will the combined weight of armor, weapons, backpacks, and other equipped gear on surfaces affect stamina, dehydration, etc.?
Okay, so we're doing speed answers.
Answers.
kind of links into what we just said. Some of it's already in. Stamina difference is there already. So if you're wearing heavier armor, your stamina is going to drain quicker as you're running around or sprinting. So like light loadouts can sprint double the distance that say like a heavy can, for example, and that kind of indirectly affects hunger and thirst as you're moving around because you're going to be running for longer because you're going slower. But obviously, this is something we keep evaluating as we go. As more and more things are added to the active status system, we need to take things like this in mind.
Will loot boxes drop rare items, weapons, armors? Declan?
Yes, kind of. They'll drop higher quality items, and some of those high quality items will be rarer, but you could also purchase a high quality item from a shop, and by virtue of it being on sale, it wouldn't be as rare as like a tier 5 helmet versus a tier 5 pistol, for example.
Right. Will we have ways to subdue players via certain gadgets like zip ties or handcuffs? Joas?
Right, so that would, I guess, tie into the bounty hunting gameplay. So restraints, we are talking about like adding stuff like handcuffs that would limit your movement and what you can interact with, while still being awake. And sedatives. Now that we have the new actor status systems with the drugs, that's definitely something that we're looking into. Like, what type of sedatives could we add that put someone to sleep so you don't need the handcuffs?
Okay. Will there be different equipment like backpacks but not for storage, such as jump packs or thruster-based parachutes, portable radars, scanners or computers, cloaked or shield devices, power packs for recharging energy weapons? Whew, let's say Declan.
Yes, we're having like professional suits which have like specialized backpacks, and they'll link up with the suit, link up with whatever specialized equipment you're holding. It's early days yet, so like we don't have jump packs planned right now, but ideas are still flowing through. And we also have modular backpacks, so you could take parts out of a backpack, throw the parts in, which would include like power packs and oxygen tanks, whatever, that kind of thing.
Maybe parachutes?
Maybe. I mean,
that would be its own
useful,
backpack
right?
if we do that. That wouldn't be on a modular. But yeah.
But you
Right.
need two, so it'd be 2 modules. Anyway, if you need a backup.
All right. I'm trying, chat. Any thoughts on introducing smoke grenades for concealment and marker purposes? Joas?
Smoke grenades, yes. We're doing smoke grenades for concealment. I quite like the idea of them being colored as well. We'll definitely look into that. We're doing a whole bunch of different grenades that we have planned right now. Like EMP grenades and noise grenades and stun grenades and even incendiary grenades. So something we're working on. Yeah.
Okay. JJ, let's talk to me about alien FPS weapons. We see these cool Banu weapons and Xi'an weapons and stuff, but what about the FPS weapons? Give me my alien weapons. My
Yes,
Banu weapons.
we will do them at some point. Obviously, we've wanted to fill out the more standard weapons first. We're going to start getting a bit weirder with the human manufacturers next. Like, if you look at the Vault weapons, they have all the evolving fire modes and stuff, which I can't really dig into because we're running out of time. But the kind of summary is, yes, we want to do them at some point. We're just finishing out the more typical ones first.
Okay. Any intention to add more FPS gadgets, things like deployable shields or sentries?
Yes. A lot more gadgets are going to be added. Like we have currently, we're working on something like different types of mines, like proximity mine and laser trip mine. So you could basically, mine up your ship so no one comes and steals it, or deployable shields. Yes, we're also working on that, and something that you would place down and it would create a barrier. Also something that resembles a riot shield. So like imagine pushing up an objective or storming a base with like the riot shield dude at the front and then everyone hunkering down behind him. Deployable turrets are also in the works.
Right. Can we please get some resistance to knockdown while crouched? I'm already knocked down. JJ.
Yes.
Night vision goggles have been mentioned a lot on Spectrum. We talked about it with the UI team about 2 weeks ago. Anything you can tell us about night vision?
So, I mean, like, we've got some kind of we've got different scope features planned for the future. So, like, different manufacturers are basically have different tech levels. Like we want to do things like infrared, night vision, like other features. Like some of like we'll even call out targets like based off like your FPS radar and scanning stuff. And then this also ties into a little bit into the different visors on different helmets for different suits. So like eventually we'll want different gameplay purposes surrounding those, like the support suit that we talked about earlier. If you've got all of that stuff on, you might actually get some additional health readouts for people in the environment without having to bring up your, healing weapon. Or if you're wearing an environment suit, you might get more environmental data, and that kind of ties into that as well. So if you have some more specialist suits, we can tie some of that gameplay onto the visor as well.
Handgun holsters and other equipment slots for regular clothing, things not like flight suits. Want to walk around with my pistol?
I'm not going to be committal to this because I've been talking about this with the character art team, and it's something that we want to do. So if I say equip a pistol, I then get a holster for my pistol on my clothing. I know people really, really, really want functional clothing, and it's something that I've been talking with Todd and people about in terms of we want to move into a direction where clothing is more useful because people want to use it. This obviously ties into that. So it's like holsters, bandoliers, things like that. Seeing how far we can go without creating too much work for our character artists.
All right, and last but not least, Titan suit. What can you tell us? Oh, I'm sorry, we're out of time. No time for the Titan suit answer. Sorry, everybody. That's it. That's our show. Stars in Live first-person features. IAE is starting right now. I think the very first Whitley's Guide is out there. Be sure you check that out. Jax is back. He's not back every single day. This year he's back on select days. I don't know which ones. Just important. I don't want you out there just looking for Jax every single day. He's got a different schedule this year. So be sure to check out the website to find out when and where you can see Jax, and enjoy your IAE on Microtech. Jump in and see all kinds of new stuff, like the recently revealed Spartan, armored personnel carrier. I forgot what APC stood for a second, and a couple other things. And be sure you save a little something in the gas tank for Mist Day. Mist Day is. So for Stars in Live first-person features, that was JJ, that's Declan, that's Zach, that's Joas. The answer for the Titan suit is that eventually, guys, it's not anytime soon. It's a waste. This is Star Citizen Live. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers.
Cheers. It's got to be a Titan suit question. Ever since Sean mentioned it, Sean mentioned it that one time. I want to wring his neck every time.
Sean's a troublemaker. Really is.